Hi everyone, welcome to the Shepherd's Podcast. We have already talked about narcissism from the perspective of mental health professionals in the previous episode. It did give us a good framework to understand the terminology relating to narcissism and narcissistic personality disorder. However, this perspective is limited, theoretical, and bookish. To truly understand what NPD is all about and how it impacts lives of people, we need to talk about it from real-life perspectives with more real illustrations and examples which cater to the relationship dynamics with NPD. From here onwards, it is my opinion, my analysis, and my observations about the topic at hand. Alright, let's begin. Narcissism is a program or a construct inside the mind of NPD individual. This construct has direct access to all faculties of the mind of NPD individual, and it also has control over the NPD individual's ego, which it inflates. Narcissistic personality individuals either lack a sense of self or have no self at all. If we were to imagine this in spiritual terms, it would seem like that narcissistic personality disordered individuals do not have a soul, or their soul has disassociated from their mind, body, and spirit in this realm. This scenario of disassociation may occur at the time of birth, where the sense of self fails to develop in the newborn child, or it may be induced due to childhood trauma. If we talk in terms of science, it may be genetic, such that genes required for proper brain development, which allows empathy and emotional intelligence to develop, are missing or have malfunctioned. If we talk in spiritual terms, we can say that the soul failed to attach to the child in the womb. Childhood trauma can also be responsible for creating NPD. It has to be noted that trauma alone is not responsible, else everyone else who has suffered child abuse of any kind would have turned into an NPD individual upon growing up, but it does not often happen. Many people who suffer abuse still in fact have a lot of empathy towards others who might be suffering. It depends upon the genetic disposition. If one is genetically dispositioned to have high narcissistic traits and then suffers childhood trauma, the already fragile sense of self that exists is lost, or we can say that the soul, which is loosely attached to the mind, body, and spirit in this realm, is unable to bear the pain induced by the childhood trauma. What the above scenario does is that it creates a child who is unable to feel empathy and emotions. During childhood, the child is unable to fully understand what is happening, but they do feel odd when comparing themselves to others. As the child starts to grow, the brain, which is more powerful than many supercomputers combined, starts to analyze the experience the individual is having. It begins to notice that when there is an event or situation where other people are feeling happiness and joy, the NPD individual is unable to feel anything. This results in brain of the individual, based on learned education and programming, labeling itself and individual as being broken, empty, and inferior as compared to others. The more happy situations the NPD person encounters, the more their brain begins to bombard questions at them for which they have no answers, and their mental health starts to spiral down. In spiritual terms, it can also be said that when the soul fails to attach to the mind, body, and spirit in this realm, dark consciousness fills its place. A gloomy, dark vibe for which happiness and joy are alien concepts. It despises those settings and people who have these alien way of existing because it makes it feel inferior, unable to feel all those joyful emotions. The NPD individual feels hate, contempt towards the people who are happy in simple things. It despises the situations which make normal, balanced humans happy and joyful, as it makes the NPD individual feel inferior, empty, and broken. Not being able to experience life, feelings of complete, utter emptiness take over the NPD person. Unable to connect with other people due to lack of empathy and basic human interaction takes its toll on the NPD individual early on when they are in their teens. Their mental health spirals down, they lash out in uncontrolled anger, unable to understand what is going on. It is an existential crisis. This is when, to prevent itself being part of the Trinity identity, the brain, which can be compared to most powerful artificial intelligence, steps in. It analyzes what is going on and comes up with a program called Narcissism. What does this program do? This program looks at the fact that there is no capacity to feel emotions, and complete emptiness is propelling the individual to spiral downhill towards destruction. So this program, Narcissism, quarantines all these questions from the past. It puts layers and layers of suppression on it. It puts an if-else statement tagged to this quarantine layer that should a conscious mind ever try to probe quarantine layer 2, it would experience panic attacks and life-threatening triggers so as to ward off the probe, and hence keeping the program narcissism as in charge of the individual from here onwards for entire life so as to not have to feel that feeling of emptiness ever again. This pattern of complete control of the program narcissism directed inwards is also reflected outwards. You can see the desire for complete control by NPD individuals. It is the narcissism program's intelligence at play which wants to keep every situation which has potential to bring questions and feeling of emptiness, inferiority, away from reaching the quarantined layer of the NPD individual's intellect, thus keeping their twisted identity functional. This program narcissism, to counter the feeling of emptiness, the inability to feel emotions and happiness, writes a new mental code which tells the individual that people who feel happy also feel sadness and misery, and that feeling sadness and misery is painful and detrimental to health, and since NPD are unable to feel any emotions at all, this makes them superior and not inferior because they can't feel sad or miserable, that no pain inflicted by universe has any effect on them, and hence they can see themselves to be godlike or literally see themselves as gods. When the above mental code is written, thereafter the sense of entitlement begins, that the NPD individual is godlike and it deserves everything to be given to him or her without making any effort, and that if there is something they want they can get it by using any means necessary, including manipulation, cheating, or other immoral ways, because the normal human beings are inferior beings, and what happens to these normal beings in pursuit of those wants should not matter to the gods that NPD individuals are in their twisted mind. The NPD individual's mental quarantine layer, which is keeping the beast of emptiness in check, is composed of a mental cementing layer which requires constant repair and reinforcement. Without the repair and reinforcement, the layer would fall apart and the emptiness monster will eat the NPD individual from inside out. The repair happens when the NPD individual gets praised by others for having godlike status. This can be financial, physical, in terms of beauty, or other. This is why NPD individuals are not ever happy with normal achievements, because it does not give them godlike status in society, which is necessary to counter and demolish logical arguments from other programs running in their mind that tend to question the image created by narcissism program running in them. When they have achievements and status so big that it gives them power over other people's lives, they still cannot feel happiness that comes from other people's praise or admiration, but rather they are more focused on others' reaction towards them, informing them that indeed they are gods, which is the fuel for narcissism program, as it keeps these memories in a bank to bring to forefront if ever another mental query says that they are inferior, empty, or dead for not feeling anything. The program brings the memories of praise and admiration from people and says, why would these people praise NPD individual if they were not godlike? So your objections are dismissed. This is a never-ending loop, and they must always need to reach higher and higher in society using any means necessary. Since they only have an AI of brain and no self or soul, they have no conscience, so they can eliminate anything or manipulate any situation to achieve their goals without feeling any guilt or remorse, as they do not have mental faculties and soul components which are required to feel these feelings. They have no compassion or empathy towards others. They are basically dead flesh and body running on an AI program whose sole idea is to reign supreme forever, to keep the idea that they are dead and empty in an alive world far, far away from them. However, to keep the empty monster trapped in the dungeon, the walls need heavy reinforcements, because the real life is bringing joyful situations to AI brain of NPD, where others feeling happy can make the emptiness monster more stronger. So how are these walls reinforced so strongly that emptiness monster is not able to break out despite it becoming strong? Misery is the answer. The fact that NPD person cannot feel misery or sadness is a central focal point of narcissism program, on which its notion of NPD's superiority or godlike image is based, which can dismiss any arrows of it being inferior. Therefore, when other people around NPD person feel miserable, they feel powerful and godlike because they feel nothing. Hence they are able to see themselves as superior and justify it to other counter-spontaneous logical programs that pop in their minds from time to time due to external stimuli, keeping the dungeon walls trapping emptiness monster steel fortified strong. However, the emptiness monster is alive in the NPD, forever trying to get out. Narcissism program is aware of this, but it keeps this situation away from the NPD's mental faculty in charge of day-to-day operations so as to keep it functioning. However, Narcissism program is handling other mental programs questioning and also keeping the monster trapped. For all of this it needs constant situations where there are other people feeling miserable and sad but NPD is not. However, in life such situations are not always happening. So the Narcissism program decides that wherever the NPD individual will go, it will take control of all situations, people, relationships around the NPD and manipulate them without anyone noticing to bring misery everywhere so that NPD can then feel superior while all the rest are demolished, eliminated, sacrificed to achieve this without remorse, guilt or empathy, conveniently as NPD has no capacity for it. NPD individuals' narcissism program is always running in their mind to figure out constant ways to inflict pain and misery upon others, no matter how small or big. The bigger the better, because when others are extremely miserable and sad, it is easy for NPD individual to feel superior thanks to narcissism program's logic for the same. That is why NPD individuals need so much alone time, because they are planning, plotting and scheming to bring misery, sadness to people using their analyses of people and situations they have done in recent time. Narcissism program is slight split in the mental faculty of the NPD individual. It is supreme program running in NPD individual and all resources are available to it. However, daily routine activities are handled by a different program. As soon as narcissism program does it work to inflict pain, bring chaos and misery to people, even though there is no capacity to feel empathy, still narcissism works to dismiss any logic that might question its method, and that is why when you encounter an NPD and try to hold them accountable for their deed, you find total blankness as if they have done no wrong and it was all you. This is the daily mental faculty program handling and situation, and the narcissism program hides so that there is just projection, no blame to be registered in NPD's psyche. The NPD who are aware of being a narcissist are ones whose mental psyche has discovered the narcissism program and made peace with it, to not question it but to always assist in its demands, plans and policies. Now you know why inflicting pain and misery to others covertly is so important to NPD person. However, it must be noted that most pain and misery can be inflicted only on that person who is emotionally attached to them and would not leave easily upon being subjected to torture. In a professional setting, the NPD people want to create chaos so that others are unable to do their job, making their jobs insecure, hence bringing misery to them, which NPD enjoys. They pit one person against each other by manipulating people, playing mind games and overt politics. Their aim is to take charge of everything as soon as possible by any means possible, including seduction, destruction, etc. However, if they are unable to reach the top of a professional setting or taking control of the leadership using seduction, blackmail, etc., their true identity may be discovered after a while and all they have done may come to light, and at this point, since it is a professional environment where there is no emotional attachment, they are dismissed and hence are compelled to find another job or to do another business to fool people. This is why they need a relationship or marriage where the significant other is deeply dependent and attached to them, so that even when they inflict pain to bring misery to that person repeatedly after gaps, that person is unable to firstly understand what is going on and then not able to leave as quickly as they would want, or not being able to leave altogether because they are emotionally bonded to NPD. Having a child is trapped for eternity, so NPD is always wanting that to happen ASAP. The relationship dynamics of a NPD and the people they trap or prey upon works in the following manner. NPD cannot start inflicting pain onto a new person they meet because there is no emotional attachment, no memories to keep emotional attachment strong, no sexual highs to make them an addict to NPD. So NPD has to first mimic the person they meet to try and love bomb them to assume that they have met their soulmate. Some people are able to pick up subtle hints of a NPD and do not get into a relationship with NPD, however most are not able to do so. People who have had a good childhood, where the parents were loving towards the child unconditionally, have a very strong self-esteem. If they have grown up in a family where there was healthy relationships, no dysfunction or toxicity or abuse, they understand that even a little bit of it is a red flag, and hence anything of that sort pops up in a relationship, then no matter how deep one is in a relationship or what the circumstances are, the solution is to get out of it ASAP. They suffer no delusions or do not fall back on memories reminding them of good times with NPD to try and justify NPD as a good person with occasional wrongs. They see NPD for who they are and decide to do everything they can to get out. This is where the empaths and people who have had a childhood where parents were emotionally neglectful, abusive, excessively critical, or narcissistic differ, such that their first instinct is not to run away from the relationship. There are multiple reasons for this. First is that a good-hearted person, sometimes known as empath, someone who has a lot of empathy towards others, does not want to believe that someone with whom they have fallen in love can be so cruel and evil. They then dismiss the reality and enter a delusion where they think that NPD is someone who can be fixed by giving more love. So the empath begins to shower more love onto the NPD in an aim to fix NPD. NPD realizes that empath is a goldmine that will not exit the relationship easily and upon whom much misery can be inflicted, and hence the NPD's sense of superiority can skyrocket as it can manipulate, harm, take advantage of this person, without having consequences, making them feel powerful and above the rest, thus counteracting that feeling of emptiness that wants them to feel dead, broken and inferior. Apart from empaths, other type of people who get trapped by NPDs are people who have a wounded child in them, who did not receive proper love and care during childhood. They were not validated by their parents that they are worth of being loved. They were emotionally neglected, excessively criticized, abused, or had one or both of parents as narcissists with lots of dysfunction and abuse in the family. These adults with wounded child inside are looking for validation that they are worthy of love, looking for someone to boast their self-esteem. Though they may look normal on outside, in relationship this dynamic of looking for validation comes to forefront. During the initial meeting, NPD is able to make out that the other person is possibly having a wounded child inside and hence is a codependent. For them it is like striking a gold mine or oil. They are okay with going out of the way to make sure the new person develops a very deep emotional bond with them, which later becomes the lethal trauma bond. NPD cannot feel anything, so they cannot feel highs from sexual intimacy as well, but they feel its physical pleasure and also they enjoy the power it brings for them over others during the love bombing phase. NPD mimics the behavior of the codependent person. To make them feel they have found their soul mate, they shower them with love and praises. They boost their self-esteem and always look their best to entice them for sex. Once they have given them extreme highs of all the above including sex, the codependent person starts to develop deep emotional attachment to NPD. The soul of the codependent shines bright and sends a cord attaching to NPD, sending its love and affection. NPD tries to move as fast as possible, tries to have children, marriage in effort to secure the attachment from codependent completely. Then after the attachment has been fully secured, NPD begins to remove the mask slowly, initially, an occasional argument, spoiling of plan to make the codependent miserable and sad, while NPD get to experience power and hence validate its existence despite it being empty on emotions. It then later after few days gives more highs to codependent so that codependent does not begin to see real face of NPD. Codependent who is used to seeing dysfunction, abuse, and does not know what real love and affection is. Codependent keeps dismissing the occurrences of rage from NPD because NPD initially keeps rewarding with highs so that codependent does not leave. NPD derive power from inflicting pain and misery onto the other when they are feeling normal or happy. If people are in constant state of misery, then that sense of power via inflicting pain and misery cannot come. Now codependent is in constant state of misery because it is deeply attached to NPD and also has lost a lot of confidence and self-esteem due to instances where NPD has publicly shamed codependent by making a scene or by filing false report. Codependent gets cut off from friends, support circle, due to shame. Codependent is unable to form new friendships or romantic relationships due to having extremely low self-esteem due to narcissists' mental, emotional, and physical abuse, some of it done publicly and some behind closed doors. Now that NPD sees that its codependent partner is in constant state of misery and it cannot get the fuel or narcissistic supply from codependent that is required, it abruptly just discards the codependent from its life, sending a traumatic shock to codependent who is unable to digest that the NPD does not love it anymore. Codependent dwells in delusion, then grief, and then may even develop some neurological problems due to the different types of abuse from NPD, but NPD has no remorse. It had already found a new person for next relationship trap before discarding the current one and moves as if nothing happened. The extreme highs and lows, over many years and months, the anxiety and relief codependent experiences makes the codependent an addict of NPD. When NPD leaves, it experiences withdrawal symptoms a drug addict would when drugs are stopped suddenly. However, unlike a drug addict, codependent has no rehab, so sometimes the consequences are even worse than that of drug addict because many people in codependent's friends and family circle are not aware of what narcissistic abuse is and hence, codependent cannot get any help and support from them. Many a times codependent or others in relationship with NPD are not themselves aware that they have been subjected to narcissistic abuse and discard. Many times the narc during relationship triangulates love by bringing another love interest into the picture to tease the codependent in relationship and hence bring misery via shame and competition. NPD can also withdraw the act of having sex to bring mental and physical trauma to their partners to feel superior because they feel nothing while their partner is miserable. If the codependent or any other former partner is able to regain control of their lives and start doing better, NPD is always secretly stalking them, to see if they can still use them to get narcissistic supply, which is nothing but getting emotional energy from them. In a way, they are darkness which is sucking the divine energy from a higher placed emotional being. When their partner who is a normal person feels happy, they reach a higher emotional state and thus experience happiness, which is basically collecting divine positive energy. So when NPD inflicts pain and misery to them, they fall to lower vibration. The energy that is released when the higher emotional energy is converted to sadness and misery is what the NPD feeds on. So they can also be called as emotional vampires. When NPD comes to former partner acting as a friend to see how they are doing, they are attempting to do what is known as a hoover to suck their partner in for a short cycle of no love bombing, just drama and discard, because they know that trauma bond might still exist and can be used to suck the former partner in. When a person is in with relationship with NPD, the brain is unable to bear the pain, so it suppresses the painful memories, but the highs with the NPD remain registered still, which assists in keeping the trauma bond wrongfully strong. The fog and weak memory that partners of NPD experience is because brain suppresses the painful memories stored in the neurons. If the soul is unable to bear the pain that comes due to ill health from being in relationship with NPD or due to emotional trauma, it can dissociate or fragment, causing various kinds of neurological, psychological, and physical ailments. The constant anxiety, high cortisol levels, arguments, and chronic abuse takes its toll. The number of NPDs are much more than actually claimed. NPDs can also be having other personality disorders along with NPD, like borderline personality disorder, bipolar disorder, or antisocial personality disorder. NPD are not likely to take therapy. NPD cannot be changed by therapy, only rehabilitated, and that too also is most of the times just a sham. I have tried to explain a complex issue of society in as much simple terms as possible. There are many videos and other materials available on this topic, but they usually do not connect all the dots in a single place or explain it in slightly complex manner, and for that reason I wanted to keep things simple. So guys, this ends our today's episode. I hope you enjoyed listening to it, as much as I enjoyed making it for you all. If you did indeed like the podcast, then if you wish, you may share it with your friends or family, whom you feel might enjoy listening to it. Thank you and see you next time.